There is this really fascinating paradox at the very core of how we live today.
Oh, totally.
Like we funnel massive amounts of human genius into eliminating, every conceivable physical and mental friction from our lives.
Right, making everything frictionless.
Exactly. We have algorithmic thermostats, cars that drive themselves, and now artificial intelligence that will just draft our emails so we don't even have to bother thinking of the words.
Yeah, it's like we treat effort as a bug in the human operating system.
Yes. Which naturally leads to a fairly uncomfortable question. What happens if we actually succeed?
Oh, man, yeah.
Like, what does humanity look like the day after we permanently engineer struggle out of existence?
And that question is exactly what we are tackling today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to have you with us. Whether you are, say, a literature student unpacking a classic for a major paper, or just someone who loves, dissecting the cultural DNA of the stories we tell, you are in the right place.
Definitely. Today we're looking at a stack of materials centered around H.G. Wells' groundbreaking 1895 novella, The Time Machine.
A total classic.
Right. And we've pulled together the original text, a wealth of Victorian historical context, and some modern literary criticism to see how this early sci-fi masterpiece maps, directly onto our modern anxieties about class, character, and, comfort.
To really grasp what Wells is doing here, you kind of have to transport yourself into the mindset of his original audience, because the story doesn't open in some laboratory filled with bubbling beakers.
No, not at all.
It starts in a highly refined, fiercely comfortable late Victorian dining room.
Just a classic dinner party.
Right. The host, who is simply called the time traveler, is presenting a concept to his guests. And it's this group composed of a psychologist, a medical man, a provincial mayor, and this really argumentative fellow named Philby.
Oh, Philby. Always pushing back.
Always. And the concept the time traveler presents, it basically shatters their entire understanding of reality.
Because he essentially tells them that everything they learned in geometry is a lie, or at least incomplete.
Yeah.
He argues that time is simply the fourth dimension.
Which is wild for 1895. And I love the way the text explains this, because it actually makes perfect intuitive sense even today.
It really does.
The time traveler asks his guest to picture an instantaneous cube, a cube that does not last for any fraction of a second.
Which, is a physical impossibility. A physical object cannot exist if it doesn't occupy duration.
Right.
The time traveler points out that any real body has to have extension in four directions. You've got length, breadth, thickness, and duration.
Duration being time.
Exactly. The only reason we perceive time as this, untouchable flowing river is simply a flaw in human consciousness.
Yeah.
Our minds are rigidly locked into moving continuously in one direction along that fourth dimension, from the cradle to the grave.
But wait, if time is just another physical dimension like up or down, then theoretically you should be able to move freely along it.
That's his whole pitch.
Right, like just as a hot air balloon allows us to defy gravity and move upward along the vertical dimension, a machine could be built to stop, accelerate, or reverse our movement along the time dimension.
It is a stunning intellectual leap.
It really is, and the guests naturally absolutely refuse to buy it.
Oh, they throw up these massive defensive walls of skepticism. Philby declares it against reason.
Classic Philby.
The psychologist calls it extravagant. It threatens their comfortable, predictable worldview. So the time traveler simply, he reaches into his pocket, places this glittering metallic model on the table, and has the psychologist press a small white lever.
And then, whoosh.
Yeah, there's a draft of wind, the flame on the lamp flickers, and the model completely vanishes.
And their reaction to seeing a literal miracle with their own eyes is just to shrug it off.
It's so frustrating to read.
The medical man mutters something about how it will probably look like a cheap parlor trick in the common sense of the morning. Like they aggressively protect their ignorance.
They really do.
But, fast forward to the following Thursday. The same guests are gathered for dinner, the time traveler is late, and right as they are eating, the door creaks open.
And he looks awful.
The man who stumbles in is utterly destroyed. He is deathly pale, covered in dirt. He's limping on bleeding feet with a half-healed gash on his face.
Yeah, he demands wine and meat, and then proceeds to tell them where, or rather when, he has been.
So he had finished the full-scale machine, strapped himself into the saddle, and pushed the lever forward.
And Wells doesn't describe time travel as some, smooth, magical transition like in modern movies.
No, it's intensely physical.
It is violently disorienting. The time traveler experiences a terrifying sensation of endless falling. Days and nights flash by so fast they look like a flapping black wing.
That imagery is so good.
The sun smears into this arch of fire across the sky. He pushes it so far that the landscape melts and reforms until the sheer terror of the velocity forces him to just jam on the brakes.
And he is thrown from the machine in a violent hailstorm, right? Landing in the year 802,701 AD.
Yep, over 800,000 years into the future.
So he lands in the deep future. If you are a Victorian scientist, or frankly even a modern listener, your immediate assumption is that you are about to encounter humanity at its absolute apex.
Right, you'd expect massive, crystalline skyscrapers, humans with giant brains mastering the cosmos.
Flying cars, all that. Instead, the hailstorm clears, and he finds himself staring at a colossal, weather-tarnished white sphinx on a bronze pedestal.
Which is super eerie.
Very. And soon, he is approached by our descendants, a species called the Eloi.
And the contrast between expectation and reality here is stark.
Very stark.
The Eloi are roughly 4 feet tall. They are physically beautiful but incredibly frail, wearing these simple purple tunics and sandals. They have soft, hairless faces and speak in a fluid, melodic language.
And their world is pristine. It's like a meticulously curated botanical garden. There are no weeds,
No dangerous predators.
no disease.
Mm-hmm.
They don't farm, they don't work. They just wander around eating giant engineered fruits and sleeping in massive, crumbling communal palaces.
Sounds pretty nice, honestly.
I mean, on paper, it sounds like they won the game of civilization. They achieved world peace and eradicated hunger. So why does Wells frame this as a tragedy?
Because Wells is applying Charles Darwin's theories of evolution directly to sociology.
Okay, unpack that.
So the time traveler observes them and quickly realizes they have the intellectual capacity of toddlers.
Wow.
When he points to the sun to explain where he came from, they mimic the sound of thunder, assuming he fell out of the sky.
Like it's magic.
Yeah, and they lose interest in him after a few minutes just to go weave flower garlands. The tragedy is biological. Intelligence, physical strength, and ingenuity are not inherent, permanent human traits. They are evolutionary tools forged by hardship.
Oh, I see. So if you remove the danger, you remove the biological need for the tool.
Precisely. If a society eliminates all predators, cures all diseases, and automates all labor, then a large, calorie-hungry brain is no longer an evolutionary advantage. It's actually a biological waste.
That makes total sense. Strength becomes unnecessary when there's no heavy lifting to do.
Right. And family structures dissolve when there are no threats to protect children from.
So the time traveler looks at these beautiful, useless creatures and concludes that the human intellect had essentially committed suicide through comfort.
It is like muscle atrophy in zero gravity, but applied to the entire human soul over hundreds of thousands of years.
That is so bleak. But as he wanders around this stagnant paradise, a massive logistical problem emerges. The Eloi do absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Yet they're wearing woven tunics, they're wearing leather sandals. Someone or something is manufacturing these items.
That's the plot hole he notices.
Right. And more immediately terrifying for our protagonist, someone has stolen his time machine. He finds drag marks leading directly inside the hollow bronze pedestal of that giant white sphinx.
Which forces him to look a lot closer at the landscape he previously thought was just a harmless garden.
Right, he starts noticing things.
He starts noticing these deep, circular shafts dotting the terrain, resembling dry wells. When he gets close to them, he can feel a powerful current of air being sucked downward, and he hears the rhythmic, industrial thudding of massive underground machinery.
So he strikes a match, climbs down one of these shafts into the suffocating darkness, and discovers the other half of the human equation, the Morlocks.
And they are terrifying.
These are horrifying, bleached white, ape-like creatures. They have massive, grayish-red eyes that are hypersensitive to light, and they scuttle on the walls like spiders.
Yeah, that subterranean discovery completely shatters his theory of a peaceful, if stagnant, utopia. Down in the oppressive heat of these caverns, he sees the Morlocks tending to the machinery that keeps the surface world running.
But he also sees them eating, right?
Yeah, he sees them sitting around a metal table, tearing into a freshly butchered piece of meat.
Which is a chilling detail because he has already noted that cows, sheep, and pigs are long extinct.
Right, there are no animals.
There are no large animals left on the surface. The only meat available
Are the Eloi.
are the Eloi. The Morlocks are breeding the beautiful surface dwellers like free-range cattle, They make their clothes, keep them fed, and harvest them on dark, moonless nights.
It is a brilliant, horrific subversion of the narrative. The Eloi aren't the masters of a utopia, they are fatted livestock.
Now let's interrogate this, because a common reading is that this is just a blunt 19th century guillotine fantasy, a straightforward socialist allegory where the oppressed working class finally gets to literally eat the rich.
Right, the ultimate eat the rich story.
Does the text actually support that kind of clean, revolutionary interpretation?
Not at all. That interpretation gives the Morlocks far too much agency.
How so?
The time traveler deduces that this speciation is the ultimate biological conclusion of the Victorian class divide. In Wells's time, the wealthy elite were aggressively walling off nature, creating private pastoral estates and avoiding all physical labor.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the industrial machinery and the laborers who operated it were increasingly being pushed underground into subways, deep-level factories, and dark slums.
Ah, I see. So it's not a sudden revolution. It is thousands of generations of environmental conditioning.
Exactly.
The rich stayed in the sun and evolved into the useless ornamental Eloi. The poor stayed in the dark and evolved into nocturnal, mechanical Morlocks.
Yeah. And the crucial point here is that neither side won. The capitalist class achieved their ultimate goal of pure leisure, and in doing so devolved into mindless prey.
Wow.
And the working class adapted to the dark and the machinery, but they didn't become enlightened rulers of the underworld. They devolved into blind, instinctual cannibals. Both groups completely lost their humanity. It's an indictment of the entire system.
That mutual degradation is so incredibly bleak, and it profoundly affects the time traveler himself.
Oh, it breaks him.
Stripped of his machine, trapped in the future, we start to see the breakdown of this supposedly rational, highly civilized Victorian scientist. The new moon is approaching, meaning the nights will be pitch black, and the Morlocks will be hunting.
And he manages to befriend a single Eloi, a female named Weena, after saving her from drowning in a river.
And we really should note the reaction of the other Eloi during that near drowning.
It's so disturbing.
They just sat on the riverbank and watched her thrash in the water. They didn't laugh, they didn't panic, they simply lacked the emotional depth to feel empathy or the initiative to intervene. Apathy is the defining trait of their existence.
But Weena attaches herself to him, offering this, tiny anchor of affection in a nightmare world. Together, they hike to a massive ruin in the distance called the Palace of Green Porcelain.
Which turns out to be a decayed natural history museum.
Right. And the symbolism of the Palace of Green Porcelain is central to the literary analysis of the book. It is the literal, physical tomb of human knowledge.
Yeah, he walks through galleries of dinosaur bones that are just crumbling to powder.
And libraries where the books literally disintegrate into dust when he touches them. It illustrates that all of humanity's intellectual striving, all our literature and science, ultimately amounted to absolutely nothing.
Just dust.
Yeah, it was abandoned and forgotten by the very descendants it was meant to elevate.
It's an incredibly haunting image. While in the museum, though, he does find a few practical items that haven't rotted away. A box of matches, a block of highly flammable camphor, and he rips a heavy iron lever off a rusted piece of machinery to use as a mace.
Armed with his makeshift club, he decides they must make a break for the White Sphinx to reclaim his machine. But they miscalculate the time.
Always a bad idea.
Yeah, they are caught in a dense, dark forest as the sun sets, and the Morlocks are waiting.
The forest scene is pure survival horror. The Morlocks are creeping up in the dark, plucking at his clothes. To create a defensive perimeter, he sets a small fire using the camphor.
But he is physically exhausted, having barely slept in days, so he passes out.
When he wakes up, the Morlocks are swarming him, trying to drag him down. And worse, the fire he started has spread to the trees. The entire forest is engulfed in an inferno.
And because the Morlocks' oversized eyes are hypersensitive, the brilliant glare of the burning forest blinds them completely. They are stumbling into the flames, shrieking in pain, completely helpless.
And how does our civilized, rational protagonist react?
It's wild.
He goes into an absolute berserker rage. He takes his iron mace and starts methodically crushing the skulls of these blinded, helpless creatures.
Yeah.
The text specifically notes that he feels a strange exultation in the killing.
Yeah, he enjoys it.
And in the chaotic frenzy of the fire and the slaughter, he loses Weena. She vanishes into the smoke, either taken by the Morlocks or burned alive in the fire he set.
We really need to pause on the irony of his behavior here.
Yes, definitely.
Throughout the novella, the time traveler views the Morlocks with intense Victorian disgust. He considers them vermin, subhuman monsters, largely because they engage in violence and cannibalism to survive.
Right.
Yet, the absolute second his own survival is threatened, what does he do? He uses a piece of machinery to bludgeon his own evolutionary descendants to death and accidentally burns down a forest, getting his only friend killed in the process.
We like to think of human ethics as this deep bedrock we've built our society on, but Wells portrays it more like a cheap tuxedo.
That's a great way to put it.
The moment you are thrust into the dark with a genuine threat, the polite dinner party conversationalist vanishes and the apex predator takes over.
Civilization is not a permanent state of being. It is a fragile, temporary agreement. And that realization profoundly shakes him. He barely survives the night and limps back to the White Sphinx in the morning light.
Where he finds the bronze doors of the pedestal wide open, the time machine is just sitting there inside.
8.
He knows it is a trap. The Morlocks have cleaned and oiled the machine, using it as bait. He steps inside, the door slams shut, and he is plunged into total darkness with a swarm of Morlocks.
He literally has to headbutt them away from him to reach the control panel.
Yeah, he manages to strike a match, lock the levers into place, and throw his weight onto them. But in the chaos and terror of the fight, he makes a critical error.
He pulls the wrong lever.
He doesn't pull the lever backward toward the 19th century. He pushes it forward.
He travels millions of years into the deep future. And from a thematic standpoint, this sequence is vital.
Why didn't Wells just have him go back home after fighting the Morlocks?
Because Wells wanted to completely dismantle the prevailing Victorian myth of infinite progress.
That's the idea of manifest destiny, right? The belief that history is just an escalator constantly moving upward and humanity will just keep getting smarter, stronger, and more dominant forever.
Yes. Wells forces the time traveler and the reader to witness the ultimate futility of that ego. As he travels more than 30 million years forward, he watches the Earth's rotation slow down and eventually stop entirely due to tidal drag.
So the planet becomes tidally locked, meaning one side faces the sun eternally and the other is frozen in permanent night.
Exactly.
The imagery is absolutely chilling. The sun is no longer a bright, yellow, life-giving star. It is expanded into a massive, dying red dome that takes up a tenth of the sky, sitting motionless on the horizon.
And the air is freezing and thin.
He steps out of the machine onto a desolate beach beside a tideless, blood-red sea. The only life he can see are these monstrous giant crabs with algal slime on their claws, slowly crawling through poisonous-looking green vegetation.
And he pushes even further forward, stopping during a pitch-black solar eclipse. The Earth is bitterly cold, it is snowing, the giant crabs have died out.
What's left?
The only thing moving in the blood-red water is a shapeless, football-sized black mass with trailing tentacles just fitfully hopping on a sandbank.
Well, that is grim.
No empires, no legacy, just silent, freezing desolation.
It is the ultimate cosmic reality check. The universe does not care about our engineering or our poetry or our stock markets.
Right.
Humanity was just a brief, chaotic, biological flash in the pan.
Exactly.
Eventually, the sun will die, the earth will freeze, and the cosmos will simply move on without us.
It shatters the time traveler completely. Having witnessed the literal end of the world, he finally pulls a lever in reverse. He speeds backward through millions of years, arriving in his own laboratory on the exact evening he had missed dinner.
He walks out of his lab, haggard and bleeding, interrupting his own dinner party. He eats ravenously, takes his guests into the smoking room, and tells them this entire unbelievable story.
And of course, just like they denied the fourth dimension, they deny his experience.
Naturally, the medical man thinks he's suffering from exhaustion. The psychologist thinks it's a hallucination. The only physical proof the time traveler has are two withered white flowers, unknown to modern botany, that Weena had slipped into his pocket before she died.
The guests leave, unconvinced. But the next morning, the narrator of the frame story, one of the guests, returns to the house.
To check on him.
Yeah. He finds the time traveler packing a knapsack and a camera, determined to return to the future and gather undeniable proof. He promises to be back in half an hour. He walks into the laboratory, the door closes, a heavy thud shakes the house.
And he is never seen again.
He just vanishes into the timeline.
Which leaves us to unpack the weight of what he uncovered. The withered flowers are a beautiful, tragic detail, suggesting that perhaps mutual tenderness is the very last human trait to burn away, long after intellect and strength have failed.
That's a nice thought.
But I want you, listening right now, to consider a different angle entirely.
Think about the trajectory of our own lives today.
Exactly. Look around your home. Look at the smart devices anticipating your temperature preferences, the algorithms spoon-feeding you entertainment so you never have to search for it, the apps that deliver food directly to your door so you never have to walk outside.
Every piece of technology we celebrate is designed to remove friction, to make us more comfortable.
The Eloi didn't appear overnight. They were the result of a million tiny, convenient choices made over thousands of years.
That's so true.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. We constantly market the elimination of effort as the ultimate human victory. But at what exact point does our relentless pursuit of a completely frictionless life cross the line from technological convenience?
Into evolutionary suicide.
Right. When does outsourcing our struggles to the machinery around us mean we start outsourcing our humanity too? Something to think about the next time your phone offers to finish your sentence for you. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.